So I reached out to Phil Bennett. He's overseas, and I said, "Hey, did you see that these were coming back?" And he's like, "Oh my God." And I asked him, who does he think of when that helmet shows up? And he said, you. I didn't know. Bryce Petty, maybe Ahmad Dixon, if we could cuss him, whatever else. But he said, you. He said, you always played even higher at a level when you wore those uniforms. Why?
It's so cliche because I feel like every article I've read just in the last 6 hours or however long ago the announcement was with the gold helmets, everybody says, look good, feel good, you play good. If you
Mm-hmm.
play good, it pays good too. I wish for me back in the day, but it's a little different now for those guys. But I don't know. I think there's obviously something to looking good and it gives you a different level of confidence. I know it sounds silly and superficial, but there's a lot of truth to it, I think. And I was the type I did want to have that swagger, and I think the jerseys that we wore, the uniforms that we wore, I don't know. I always felt like we looked good. Whenever we threw those gold helmets on, it was just next level. And I'm thinking of like when that was announced to us as a team. There's a song that was really big at that time. I think that was at the end of 2012, and it was that song "All Gold Everything" by Trinidad James.
Yeah.
And I remember them playing that song, just during workouts and just in general, and it just went together so well. I know it sounds cheesy, but at the same time, it was like, it all ran together. Just with the announcement and when that song came out. So it was just ironic that song was out at that time. And yeah, I think it just gives you a little, extra gear. Honestly, that's how I felt. So, but surprised to hear that Coach Bennett was thinking of me first. I think of guys just from, maybe it's more from like the photos and stuff that I'm seeing all the time, but I always think of, Oakman and
Yep.
and obviously Petty. You see his pictures all the time with the gold helmet. So, but hey, I'm honored that Coach Bennett thought of me.
He said this, and Paul, Eddie Lackey, he played his ass off when we wore them. That's exactly what he said on the text. So there you go.
That was international rates too.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
He's in Europe right
he's
now.
like in Europe. Yep.
Oh man,
yeah.
I didn't know that. World traveler.
Eddie, I've got two questions for you, but the second one can't happen until you explain the pencil thin mustache that we're seeing right now. Are you are you opening like a speakeasy or something out there in West Texas?
I get a lot of looks. I think
it suits you.
I wish I could have all that you have, but I don't.
Yeah.
I don't have any. I just can't grow the hair. I can't ever connect this.
Yeah.
And this will never fill in. So I've got to just, I can't have these crazy little hairs sticking out at you. They're at least under control. That's all I can say. I feel more like a man, but I think people think less of me.
No.
It
does suit you. It just. I've never seen you with facial hair before, so I was surprised.
Always very clean shaven.
Yeah. So the fan element of when you guys the look good, the fan element's been big because they've been clamoring for it for a very long time to bring it back, and now they finally have. Can you describe the pop the first time that you guys ran out from the fans wearing those uniforms? Because that had to also help you as well. Like, oh man, this is something else.
I mean, yeah, it was energy. I even look when I was not playing anymore, when the first time that I went to a game and I walked in and saw them wearing those helmets in McLean, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's what it looks like. It's a completely different view. I feel like when you're in the stands or you're in a press box or something, I'm sure. It was energizing for sure. You could feel that the fans really liked it. I don't know. I think that I saw it from a different perspective once I wasn't on the field too, and really saw just how cool those helmets look. And it all feeds together with the energy. The fact that you already feel good with how it looks on you, but you feel that energy from the crowd as well when, they obviously are acknowledging, the helmet. So I don't know. I really feel like that did bring, even added energy to the stadium, to the team. And you saw the performance, when we did have those helmets on that year, minus the Fiesta Bowl. Hate to even say that. But.
Eddie, not to rehash everything, but just simply put, I know for the fans, some of them have spoken out and have said that this is kind of another piece of healing, just that's slowly been occurring over the last few years. The players being honored from the championship team a year ago, bringing blackouts back finally after those went away. And this was kind of almost like the last sort of thing that people enjoy that wasn't there for a while that's now been brought back. Does it feel almost like another kind of layer of healing, if that makes sense from a player's point of view as well?
I think so. I think, yeah, I think we talked about it a bunch last year and kind of towards the end of that season as they brought us back, a lot of these conversations came up I think that the more that this stuff is coming back, it just feels like we're not as outcasted as it felt for a while, those teams during that era. And I don't know. I do really think that it has continued to unite us. I think, I've been texting with a few of the guys today, even about the gold helmets. I was talking to Lynx Hawthorne on the phone earlier, and I think if anything for us, for former players during that time, it's kind of bridge that gap back together, and not completely. I don't think that it's just because of that, but I think that it's absolutely it's kind of healing in a way. I could see that, but I really enjoy the black uniforms, the gold helmets, and I think it brings back some good memories from our teams.
This team, 8-5 last year, had the bowl loss to LSU, and it just was like okay, they might get this one too, but they made the surge at the end. They needed that, Eddie, because the years prior at 6-7, and then the disastrous 3-9. Your thoughts about what you saw and how they turned it around and the expectations? Keaton Thomas, of course, hell of a player on defense, among a few others. Your thoughts about the defense?
I'm really excited to see just the development going into this season. I know that, obviously Keaton Thomas is going to be that leader out there. Losing Matt Jones, obviously he was a playmaker last year for us, and he was the commander in chief of that defense. And I think Keaton Thomas, you're not going to see really any drop off. I think he probably I know that he learned a lot from Matt Jones and matured. Being there with him, and now he's stepping into this role that, I think he's made for that. I actually ran into him when we were being celebrated. Our teams were being celebrated in November last year. Bryce and I went and toured the facilities, and Keaton happened to be in the locker room. We talked to him for a little bit, and he's just got his head on so straight. I would expect nothing less, but I think highly of Keaton Thomas. I think he's a leader at heart, and I think he's going to be the focal point of that defense. And a lot of the stuff that Aranda's defenses filter to. They filter to the linebackers, and he's gonna have to step up and be that playmaker. You've got some really good guys returning as well. I think it's. You guys correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's 8 returning offensive starters and 5 defensive starters, right? I was looking at that earlier, and I think that there's a lot to go off of with that from a defensive standpoint. I think that we're going to be tested just with the front 7. I want to see how we do against Auburn. I think that's going to be really interesting, but I feel really good about the squad in general, but I think the corners are going to be in great shape. The our safeties, I really love watching Carl Williams at star position, and I think that it'll be fun to just see where these guys are at, and obviously just a huge test playing Auburn game 1, and I think this is just a huge obvious test going into this season, and we'll see how they show up.
Eddie, I do want to ask you about one of the pieces of bad news, but first you mentioned that you were walking around. Slight upgrade from the Simpson Center, right? That they have now, the new facilities. I mean, what were your thoughts on seeing the full meal deal that they've now got going on over there?
Oh my gosh, yeah, it was beautiful. Bryce and I kept looking at each other like, can you believe this? And there's just so many layers to it too. And I think, one of the coolest things was the walkthrough room. We were just walking across that like bridge, literally a bridge going over the weight room even, and looking down there, and they're pointing it out to us like, yeah, that's, Coach Aranda, he wanted the walkthrough room, and there's that huge screen and everything. And I'm like, are you serious? Like, I cannot believe the difference. And I thought, in my opinion, we had it amazing, at the Simpson Center. I think it was phenomenal, and I love the indoor facility just the way it was. But just to think like it could be upgraded that much is pretty crazy. I mean, I'm super happy for those guys that are getting to do that. As far as a recruitment tool, I mean, man, I walk those guys through that, and they'll be mesmerized. I think everything from just like the scenery of being right on the river, and right across the river you're looking at the stadium, and I can just picture myself over there studying for tests and doing schoolwork and that kind of stuff there too. So I know those guys are living up there. If they're not, then they're silly, because it's an incredible facility, and a lot to take advantage of there.
So there was the unfortunate news about Dawson Pendergrass is going to miss the rest of the year. Kind of how does a team rally around some news like that, in your opinion? And Bryson Washington's a great player, but obviously that's a little bit of a hit for the backfield.
Yeah. I think this comes down to our depth, and we've got to be able to rally at this time. And I think, I hate to say, like, if it's going to happen, let it happen. At least a few weeks out for these guys to be able to prepare a little bit more. But I think guys are going to have to step up, and that's football. I think that you're going to get hurt at some point, hopefully not severe, and hopefully not a scenario like this where you're out for a year. But football is a pretty brutal sport in a lot of ways. And, you hope to stay healthy, but he's playing a position too that's pretty brutal. You're hitting guys every play, just like linebackers are. And I just think, I think that he's going to be a big part in helping, making sure that these guys are united, and that the next man up, is in place, and that he can help mentor him. I mean, I think he's been there a couple years now. He knows the ropes. He's I would consider him a vet at this point, and I hate to hear that, hate to see that for him, because I know that he was primed and ready for an incredible year. But hey, I'm excited to watch him next season when he is healthy. But I think that he's going to be a big part in rallying those guys, and I'm confident somebody will step up, to be that next man.
Eddie, Dave Aranda has been very good at developing linebackers over his career. You mentioned how much you like Keaton Thomas. When it is come to a player and they're getting recruited by a head coach, or a position coach, but when you're a head coach and you can say, look at the linebackers and the DBs that he had at Wisconsin and at LSU before Baylor, how much does that really resonate with a player when you can go like, hey, like this guy, like Devin White, not a big guy, like, especially when it comes down to, hey, I don't know if I'm going to be an NFL player. What do I need to focus on that, or opportunity? Are those big things in recruiting?
Absolutely. I mean, you want to be developed. You want to set yourself up for success. And I don't think anybody that's playing at the highest level of college football is not trying to prime themselves and be the best that they could possibly be to make it to the NFL. I mean, everybody wants to make it there. So I think that's definitely a piece when you're evaluating things. I know that there's the piece about the money. I mean, obviously that's a huge piece in things now, which I didn't have to really think much about. But I really think that's a big deal to these guys that are being recruited by Coach Aranda. His history really speaks for itself, and winning a national championship, being the defense coordinator. I think he was the linebackers coach there too, right? At least he had his hand in there with
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
And so I just, it's really awesome to, or it's comforting, I think, as a recruit going into playing for a guy like him, knowing he's going to be able to get me right. When I got to Baylor, I know it was a different coaching staff, but just as an example, like our coaches there, I feel like I created such bad habits in high school. I was a playmaker and I made the plays that I needed to get noticed enough and get recruited. But they basically had to break me down like a car, take me apart, put new parts, in there and just recreate my systems and processes and how I did things. And I just look at a guy like Coach Aranda, as being the master of being able to do something like that with guys. And I think it'd be super enticing to me as a recruit, and it was because he did recruit me and I committed to him when he was at Hawaii. So I was intrigued by it, but I really wanted to go play at Baylor. So but I think it is a key factor in a lot of these guys as they're getting recruited by him.
Massage Heights is something you've owned now for what, since 2017 in Abilene. We know all about what it means to you, physically fit and all it meant. And then learning, I'm sure, about your body and how it reacted to post-game days. Is that what also got you involved in doing what you do now?
Yeah. I think from a testimonial standpoint, I always had soft tissue injuries growing up. I always pulled my hamstrings, quads. And then I got to Baylor, and I never had those issues. I never had those issues. You could say, this and that. Obviously, we had a phenomenal strength conditioning program, and they were keeping us right. But I never had a massage in my life, and I was getting those twice a week at Baylor, and I never had a pulled hamstring. I never had a pulled quad. I was always getting that stuff worked on, and I was working harder than I ever had in my life. And just as far as my legs, gosh, we would squat the day after a game, and just to think I never did pull a hamstring and that sort of thing. You got to be available, and that's huge. To me, I looked at it from a deeper level of like, hey, obviously football is just a game. I think that it makes an impact on a lot of people's lives, and it's entertainment too, and it does a lot for a lot of people. But I was looking at it more from the sense of like, what about that ER nurse that really is saving somebody's life, who's on her feet for 12 hours a day for, maybe 4 or 5 days a week. And, that lower back's going to be stiff, that those feet are going to be achy. And I just think that obviously for someone's career like that, they need it even more than the athlete, because they're saving people's lives, and, they're helping people each and every day, survive. And so I think of careers like that, and just a plethora of different things that people do, that massage can really help them.
All right, man.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, well, we appreciate it. Bennett did tell me that you are scratch golfer or close to it, and you picked it up basically without any lessons. So I hate you.
Let's go play some golf.
He said during the fall you might have maybe Hager comes down to Miramont?
Yeah,
I played with Phil a couple of 3 weeks. Yeah, and get together. It depends on the schedule we have with high school too. But I'd love to come down and see you, man. We appreciate your time.
That'd be great. You got my number. Let me know.
Yes, sir.
Would love to.
Eddie Lackey
Smoak.
on the Chrome helmets coming back for Baylor, but also on the 2025 football season.